What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that I think is pretty anticipated amongst its fans for sure. I definitely saw it come up in the comments. We are going to go over the latest offering from Sepulchral Curse, Crimson Moon Evocations. This also comes out the 28th of February on Dark Descent Records. This band formed in 2013 in Finland. This is their third full-length overall. I only own their Deathbed Sessions EP, which is just gnarly, gross. This band is Finnish death metal. I think gnarly and gross kind of just covers it, as well as awesome, generally, because it's Finland. But this band is also described as blackened death metal. There's a lot of different elements woven in here, but I did notice that this band also has two ex-members of a mutual favorite of ours, Solothus, which is really killer deathdoom out of Finland.
I got into these guys a couple years ago. I don't own any of their albums, but they're all over Spotify playlists that I listen to, and so I have become a big fan of them over the last couple years. And yeah, I was really stoked to listen to this album, so that's where we're at.
And honestly, all right, I mean, it definitely reminds me of like the stuff that I've heard, but I will say that this album is maybe a little bit different in terms of it being maybe just a bit more dynamic, maybe a bit more melodic in spots. But that isn't to say this band has like completely changed their style. No. This is punishingly heavy, dark, dreary Finnish death metal. I mean, I could pretty much just kind of end on that. Like, if you're a Finnish death metal fan, like, oh, okay, no, I'm already going to fucking buy this.
Yeah.
Which your instincts would be good. This is just riff-driven, powerful as hell. Right away with the opening track, Wildfires, you get into heavy, dissonant strumming. I know his ears perked up almost immediately. Blast beats, it's heavy, stomping drums. My God, the production on this album is dense.
And grandiose, rich and full production. The guitar tone on here is sizzly and crunchy, but gigantic. Like the biggest, beefiest guitar tone I've heard so far this year. I think it's safe to say. Lots of layers, very heavily atmospheric, but not with synths for a change. Like, I didn't really notice any of that going on. It's just...
you don't think there were any?
It's just, again, that density, just, I mean, the scope of this is just huge.
Yeah, I mean, you're greeted to a wall of guitars immediately, but, I mean, the drums have a huge sound as well. Man, the amount of reverb on that snare is absolutely awesome. It's like someone dropping an M80 inside of an old oil drum, just reverbing, and it's just this immediate pop. And yeah, this album is just heavier than hell. Vocals kind of sit in the back of the mix. You do occasionally get like some trade-offs between the main vocalist and I believe it's the bassist that does the backup vocals, which I think he has the more harrowing screams that occasionally cut through. The vocals, honestly, they kind of get drowned out often by the guitars, but I'm not complaining because the guitars dominate this for a reason. And the guitars honestly drive this album because there's a lot of really cool dynamics on here that honestly, I don't think I picked up on like their previous works. There's a lot more melody on here, but it's used really well, and it's not used to kind of like overtake the heaviness. Like, at no point on here would I say that any of the songs get too melodic or venture into melodic death metal territory. Honestly, like the moments that are more melodic with the more like traditional mellow death lead melodies on here kind of reminds me of like Insomnium, except if Insomnium was just flat out brutal.
And it's not necessarily overbearing on melody and or harmony either. It's just like peppered in there in between a bunch of gross, gnarly tremolos. It's just enough to make it like catchy, kind of. House of the Black Moon has a bunch of catchy harmonies. Empress of the Dead, I think, are some of the biggest like lead harmonies throughout this record. And again, it's not overdone. It's just enough to be like an earworm.
And the harmonies are, again, like stylistically different. You have, of course, like harmonized tremolos that are particularly cold and haunting, Wildfires and the Currents of Chaos. You definitely get a little bit more of those blackened touches, which I would say most of this album is kind of dominated by death metal, but that is in no way a complaint. But those kind of break it up and kind of add like a little bit of that, just icy, dark, kind of evil atmosphere. And as he brought up Empress of the Dead, the harmonies on that one and the last track, Crimson Passages, way more along the lines of like just flat out death doom, like melodic death doom. almost kind of peaceful-ish. Like,
Kind of.
Definitely got some, like, My Dying Bride vibes in certain spots there, though not as woeful. That's probably because Aaron wasn't singing on it about, you know, a kitten that died in his arms on Christmas morning or something like that. Be thankful I didn't bring up Neverending Story.
Ugh. Gonna run myself over with my own car. I'm gonna put it in drive and just dive out.
Well, you'll die quicker than Artex did.
Oh. He died because he was sad. Now you're thinking at this point, bunch of melody, a bunch of harmony. What are you doing? This is an evil, dark record. It still is. Because it gets heavier than shit on songs like The Locust Scar, Beneath the Dismal Tides, and The Currents of Chaos. That whole 3-song run right there. The Locust Scar, I love it so much. I, again, have become such a giant sucker for low, deep, dark tremolos. And The Locust Scar, the whole thing, goes from being super aggressive to super fucking chuggy. Most of The Locust Scar just stays heavy.
Yes.
Like the whole song, just evil and dark and, again, nasty fucking tremolos and big chuggy riffs. The same could be said, I guess, for Beneath the Dismal Tides. That triplet chug gallop that's right after the bridge is something else right there.
There was a lot of breakdown moments in here, which I was kind of surprised by, and they are punchy. They are mean as hell. And then, you know, frequently they'll kind of like change around the riff a little bit on top of them, maybe even add like a lead melody. The ones on Beneath the Dismal Tide, like they add like some very Slayer-ish, like Jeff Hanneman harmonies, which, I mean, that instantly just makes everything a touch more evil. But The Locust Scar might be the heaviest track on this album. There's not a second on there where it's just not just beating you into the ground with the heavy tremolos, the chuggy riffs. You do get a good like melodic lead break, and the transition into it is really clever. Like all of a sudden you're almost kind of like in like dark tranquility territory, and then it just comes crashing back down into the flat out heaviest riffs that you kind of heard earlier on in the song.
Yeah, the transition into it's really cool, but that transition out of it is devastating. Which happens a lot on this record. There are a lot of devastatingly heavy moments on here. Empress of the Dead, after they get through that big lead harmony, dude, brutal as shit.
The giant deathdoom breakdown that shows up on The Currents of Chaos, too. They kind of, I don't know, I feel like they kind of like emptied out a portion of the production. Like the guitars got like a little bit more muted just to make room for the drums, which they just cranked the reverb on. Like every snare hit sounded like it was echoing through like, I don't know, a giant abandoned auditorium that's probably also haunted. And these songs overall are like a little bit longer too. Like the entire album's like under 40 minutes, but most of the songs are kind of in the 5 to 6 minute range. But at no point did they get dull. In fact, there's a lot of really awesome transitions and really cool key changes, which I rarely ever bring up key changes as like a big thing, but there's some really interesting ones, like switching from like more distant atonal harmonies to more like flat out melodic ones. The key change that shows up on The Locust Star with the opening, just super aggro, deep tremolo. Somehow they took like an absolutely evil riff and then just the slight key change and they just sprinkled more Satan on it. It was like, dude, my face is going to be wrecked after this song.
Yeah. Both of us, that whole song, were just bleh. I'm really shocked that my face isn't still like that.
But yeah, the songwriting here I think is really awesome. And you get this constant ebb and flow between melody and brutality that kind of keeps this fresh. Like House of the Black Moon was probably one of the first ones I really started noticing it. You have like these big heavy breakdowns, big syncopated riffs, but there's constant lead melody. And the lead melodies never get too bright. Like there's definitely some like ascending moments on here where like, oh, it's reaching for the sun, or in this case, a crimson moon. But most of them are dreary, melancholic, and then occasionally more sinister. There's not a tremendous amount of solos on here, but the solos that are on here I think are really impactful. Crimson Passages, that solo is probably the best one on here, and I like how it works its way out of a lead melody into this more lavish lead at the end.
The one on Empress is pretty catchy too, actually. A little bit more elongated, notes are a little bit more drawn out, there's a little bit more feeling in it, but Empress of the Dead also is a pretty, like, I don't know, sad song in itself anyway, so.
The last two tracks got fierce melancholic vibes on it. Currents of Chaos, too. There's a really cool lead section when they just break into a very classic double time, like D-beat stomp. Gets a little bit more I wouldn't necessarily call it like shreddy, but it kind of just like taps into like a lot of just old school death metal tropes. But the constant changes in here kept this really interesting. And again, this feels more melodic than previous releases that I've heard by this band. But again, it kept this really fresh, like, you know, going from these oppressive dark melodies to all of a sudden like, oh, well, that's super sad. And in terms of the drum work in here, I really enjoy just, you know, kind of how straightforward it is. Plus the drum sound. The drum sound, like, again, it's like cannon fire. But most of the blast beats, you know, initially you kind of start off with that Mike Smith style, just
a lot of them.
Punishing blast. Yep. But then later on, especially in the more blackened moments, show up on like Beneath the Tides and Currents of Chaos, you get a lot of those like straightforward, more just fast-paced blast beats. And of course, tons of groovy pockets. And again, I was kind of surprised by the amount of like just chuggy, fucking aggressive breakdowns in here. Now, there was one issue while we were listening to it, because I looked up the tracks on, you know, the archives, because I still trust them. And who knows, it might have been Spotify's fuck up, but yeah, the tracks were mixed up because Currents of Chaos and Empress of the Dead, they were switched on here. So I don't know what the track list actually is. I guess I'll know when I get my copy in the mail. But in terms of like actual complaints on here, I really don't have a tremendous amount. Maybe one. And it's still kind of minor because it's just me saying, man, they kind of latched on this riff and dry humped it too long. But it was still a pretty good riff. Crimson Passages. Definitely one of these slower tracks on here. It's way more brooding. It's definitely got more of a death doom vibe, so maybe this is where like the Solothus side kind of comes out a bit. I did think it kind of like stayed on this riff too long. I thought the chorus melody was excellent on it. And there are some fun transitions around, you know, the bridge, but it really kind of locks on this main, big, heavy, syncopated riff, which I generally love that, but I think it kind of stayed on it too long.
I don't know. I thought it made it really catchy, especially since Crimson Passages is the more mid-tempo, kind of slower, groovy jam anyway. The melody sticks with you for sure.
Yeah, and the lead play on it, again,
yep.
Really solid, really somber. But yeah, overall, yeah, this was solid, and it's a really interesting blend of styles. Like, there's, again, a lot of stuff going on. Like, you can make a lot of comparisons to, like, Cruciamentum or Incantation or Desolate Shrine, but also, again, like, you know, fucking Insomnium, or even like In Mourning, which is awesome at like, you know, like more progressive, mellow death doom. I don't know, that band's just kind of all over the place too. But overall, I'm gonna give this 4 stars. Man, I feel like I've been giving out a lot of 4 stars here lately. There's been a lot of really good music that's problematic for later on in the year.
Yeah, right.
But honestly, this is a really killer album, and it does some things a little bit differently, at least as far as I've heard. I'm sure this band has got melody in the past in terms of their releases, but here, the melodies are really striking. They really stand out. They stand out as much as the absolutely punishing moments on here, which are all over the damn place. I could pretty much just describe this as just a well-rounded death metal album. It does kind of a lot of different things across the board as far as like death metal. You know, melody, dissonance, punishing breakdowns, blast beats, old school tremolos. It reminds me of a lot of killer bands. Yeah, if you're a big fan of, again, like any of the bands I brought up, especially Desolate Shrine and also, again, In Mourning. It's almost like kind of the blend of the two there. Check this album out. Absolutely awesome.
I 100% agree. I'm going to give this 4 stars as well. This record is very entertaining, very well-written songs, big, massive riffs. Holy shit. Yeah, and the fact that it is constantly dark, fairly evil, and sad as shit. It's got a lot of, like, My Dying Bride kind of harmonies and just melancholic melodies to it, and you just feel sad, but at the same time, you're evil, so you're not overly sad, but you're angry, but you're not really. I don't know. A lot of emotions on this record, but for the most part, it's just heavy and a treat to listen to. I tell you what, when it gets to the middle of the record, it gets gnarly and gross. I love my low-end tremolos. There's a bunch of like syncopated chugs that are sprinkled in everywhere. Pretty much around every corner of this record is pretty damn entertaining. Again, big, rich, full production helps out really well. All the layers, this big dense wall of these I'm telling you, man, giant guitars. This is probably one of the biggest tones I've heard this year. It's packed full of pretty much everything. Blast beats, death doom moments, big giant harmonies, big atmospheric sections. The lead work is pretty cool. It doesn't appear often, but it's just a well-rounded mixture of a bunch of awesome styles, most of it being death metal. Yeah, if you're a fan of the Incantation, Cruciamentum, Prescription, even a little bit of Fossilization, and a ton of other stuff, you're probably really going to dig this record. I really dug it. Yeah, we've been giving it a lot of 4 stars. It's going to be I'll just say fuck my year-end list already, and we're only at the end of February, so yeah. But if you like all that, check this out. I'm pretty sure you're going to like it.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you were new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and we do a members-only live stream, which we will be doing one probably here at some point.
Soon.
And, yeah, we'll try to figure out what the hell we're talking about. It generally turns into jibber-jabber, but jibber-jabber with us can be fun.
It really can be.
Because we're fucking idiots.
That's true.
But memberships are the new way to support the channel. We also still have our store, thrallsofmetal.com, with our t-shirts and our hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And again, if you'd like to become a member of this channel and hang out with us on live streams, which could be a lot of fun. I'm not guaranteeing fun, okay?
It's a time.
It is a time that you might have.
You may not get that time back either. But,
click the button.
Yeah, click the button. Or you don't have to. You know, maybe you have already. Maybe you're regretting your choice. Maybe you're not regretting your choice. It's fine. We understand. We are us. We get it. I promise. But what we enjoy most is the fact that you're here. We genuinely appreciate everybody that's a part of this channel, whether you're a member or not. We're happy to have so many fans and friends, and telling you what, man, this channel has become pretty big, and we're pretty excited for it. Tons of content coming your way: album reviews, discography rankings, multiple discussion forums, live streams, members-only live streams, states of metals, at metals, at not metal, Nick's never-ending collection updates, stuff coming from my camp, I promise. I promise. Life is pretty sucky lately, but it's gonna get unsuck. I'm gonna unsuck life off.
Let's blow.
Yeah, well, whatever. We appreciate you being here. Thank you guys for being a part of this channel.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.